All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another week of Stage Door Medium. I'm not sure when this is going to air yet, but as you can tell, it's the holidays here. And again, I never know which episodes air when. So if you notice, like, thankfully the salons have opened back up for a little bit. So depending on a couple of the episodes that were airing, things got rough if you were watching the podcast. So now I feel like coiffed again. I'm ready. I'm ready to be seen again. So we have such a special guest today. I love all the people that I read. I'm very lucky that I never have like a bad, you know, a negative experience with the Broadway folks I've read for. But it's a rarity that I leave one going like, I just feel like I made a new friend. And so we have, gosh, she's so talented. We're going to talk all about her today. Star of Wicked, Hedwig, Renaissance off Broadway. If you watch with Carmel Dean, who was featured earlier. So we have the incredible Hannah Corneau here today. Hi, Hannah. How are you?
Hi, I am so happy to be here. Thank
I
you so
am
much.
so happy to have you here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Gosh, so how are you doing? How are you holding up in quarantine?
Oh my goodness, I know we talk about that. We have answers to this question, right? Like
Yeah.
it's such a crazy question because like of the year we've had, but I feel like we all have like our script. So it's in response to a question like that. I'm okay. We are getting through. I feel very lucky in many ways that I'm blessed in my life, but it's been a it's been a crazy year, but I'm good. I'm
Good.
good. We're happy, we're healthy, all you can ask for at this point. So
I say the
I'm
exact
good.
same thing. That's all, really, that's all I can hope for. Every
Yeah,
day or every week I get through and I'm like, all right, we're all still healthy. We're all still working. It's a big blessing that I don't take for granted. So, um,
absolutely.
gosh, there's so many things we're going to cover today, but, I guess let's start with I'm sure I know this is a staple question that you answer probably all the time, but how did you get did you always have the bug for theater? Like, did you know this is what you wanted to do?
Right. Yeah, I've been in love with theater since I was like 5. Um, Growing up in kind of central New York, actually like near Buffalo,
Yeah.
near the Utica area.
Yeah.
But that's not too far, not
Yeah,
too
the
far,
Stanley,
but
the Stanley Theater over in Utica.
yes,
I've
yeah.
seen many a show there when sometimes when a tour is not coming to Buffalo, we would drive to go to the Stanley and stuff. But yeah, keep going.
Ex- Exactly, exactly. So I grew up around there until I was like about 7, and they just had an incredible community theater scene there. My dad was involved in a production of Annie with my sister, and I guess if I were to answer when the bug hit or like got me, it was that production. It was so inspiring to see my father and sister emote that way. And just have so much fun expressing themselves theatrically. And so I guess that's when it hit. And yeah, that's when. And I was so lucky enough to be immersed in that great community theater scene until like I was about 7 when my family then moved to more of the capital region area. And, I was lucky enough to go to a wonderful school system that had an incredible theater program. It was a public school, but like, the fall play and the spring musical were just like a big deal.
Yeah.
So, I was able to cultivate skills throughout my life. So I'm a lifer. It was a long time ago when I caught the bug.
For me, Annie was a big one too. I mean, I hadn't seen the production as a kid, but I mean, I was thinking about it recently, with the passing of Anne Reinking, like that movie. I had
That
never
movie.
seen somebody like move like that, and just the way, like, I remember being like a kid, learning the Fosse, the turn and like whispering, "We got Annie" around the house, and just was there a show that you saw that, because for me it was probably Phantom in Toronto. I saw that, like, for me I was like, wow, like this is like a world that I feel like I belong in.
Oh wow. I love hearing that because yeah, I feel like us theatrical enthusiasts have that moment of, wow, this is a world that I belong in. And just basically feeling the magic, as cliche as that sounds. The show that I saw, well, the first show that I saw on Broadway was Beauty and the Beast. And of course, there was magic there. I mean, that was like when the
Yeah.
castle turned around. And I mean, it just was like, what is happening? But I do distinctly remember seeing Brian Darcy James play Barrett in Titanic. And I just remember that performance, kind of Victoria Clark too. I mean, she was so incredible in that production. I mean, even David Elder too, who sang No Moon. That whole cast was just very, very charmed, and the production was really unique. And so I remember I was a little bit older, of course, than when I saw Beauty and the Beast, but I was lucky enough to see Titanic because, you know, we're from the state of New York, so it's a drive to the city, but it's not too far. But I remember seeing that when I was kind of a young adult, and I was like, this is the world that I belong in.
Yeah.
You know, that feeling. It was like, wow. Wow.
Gosh, I'd love to pick your brain too about I guess let's just go to Hedwig. So I know we were talking about it but before I started rolling, but can you talk about like I had a really good conversation with Allison K. Daniel about this idea of how as artists we try to people are reminded that there's more to life than just Broadway as an artist, but at the same time it's this it's tricky. It's a paradox because Broadway is still the pinnacle. And for so many people, I feel like there's this idea of I haven't made it unless I make it and get cast on Broadway. So could you go back and your story, I read that article, you know, in the Chicago Tribune that we were talking about with you, waitressing, and then, you know, Hedwig magically popped up. And can you talk about that time in your life? Like, were you expecting Hedwig? Like, did you ever anticipate it? You know, anything you want to share about that?
Yeah. Well, so I have been I've been very, very, very lucky. Um, I was living in Chicago. It was out of school. I graduated from Syracuse University, and I immersed myself in that theater scene. But I was also doing contracts, you know, where I had to like strike the set after I performed like the, you know, month-long run, and like then I'd get paid. You know, it was that. And I was like serving at this like actually pretty cool brunch spot in Chicago. And Chicago is an excellent culinary scene. So it
Yes.
was very cool to work at a restaurant that was immersed in that scene, with those people of that industry. So that was a cool world to like get into, and a cool group of people to know. So, but yes, I was waitressing. I was doing these shows at night, and then I was introduced to a man named James Kaleri, who has been a humongous champion in my journey, in so many ways. And so he called me in for a show called Harmony, and I got it. And that's what enabled me to move out of Chicago, do Harmony, do the out of town tryouts for Harmony, and then continue to work off Broadway. And then Hedwig came about. So it was, you know, it was a journey. Like it was, and I say I'm lucky because there is no one way to climb the ladder to get to Broadway. And you know, you mentioned like people say like, oh, I need to reach this pinnacle, otherwise I haven't made it yet. Oh my goodness, I would say some of the most formative, enjoyable times that I've ever had performing were not on Broadway.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's important to mention. I feel, and I'm glad you bring that up. But yes, it was such a journey, and Hedwig was a huge break. It was a real break, and I felt so honored to be able to usher that story in, and my goodness, replace Selena Hall. Like, hello, she's wacky, amazing,
I
and you
know.
know, she won the Tony for that, and really, like when I say she won the Tony, I really mean like she won the Tony.
Yeah.
You know, she did that track. She choreographed her entire evening as Yitzhak. I mean, she's as much as a genius singer and actor as she is, like she's a brilliant dancer, mover. So she just really laid out that groundwork for me to try to emulate as well as she did. Yeah, it was amazing. And no, it's never expected. That's why I'm like the luckiest person ever. You know, it's like it's never expected. You pinch yourself all the time.
That's very much though. It's funny. Like that's how it was when you had reached out to me. Like I'm such a fan of your work. So I had never expected. It's funny. You know, with having the business page, I'm a little new to it. So I didn't realize that there had been like a DM sitting there and like, I'm hopping into the shower for the day. And then like a notification comes up and it's like, you know, Hannah Corneau started following you. And I'm like, what? And then you know, you send me that sweet DM and you're like, hi, my name's Hannah. And I'm like, oh, I know who you are. And, cause you know, and your voice is it's so singular and what's so, it's, and it's so crazy incredible the amount of talent that you have and the fact that your voice transitions so well to your own solo work as well, like Berlin and Go. And it's not often that you have someone that I think can transfer that well from, you know, their own style of music back into the Broadway world. And I remember when I saw you in Wicked, I was very fortunate because I took my students last October. I took them to see Wicked, and they, you know, it's always someone's first time seeing Wicked. And I thought for sure that most of these students had seen it before because the tour comes to Buffalo like every year. They're like a special announcement, like Wicked. I'm like, okay, like, and I still get excited, but they could not stop talking about you, you know, on the bus on the way home, and they just it was such that cast was incredible. It was such a thrill. So, could you talk about like what was that experience like doing that for what is it, a 9-month contract, a year?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh my God. Okay, my heart has melted out of my body.
It's so true, though. It's so true.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. It that means a great deal to me. So I really appreciate all of those kind words, and I'm so thankful that you were able to see me in it as such an, you know, almost like a Wicked aficionado. Like, you know, Wicked, you know, you've seen it many times, and
Yes.
I love that. And that's what makes me even more honored that that you were moved by the performance you saw that day when I was playing Elphaba. So thank you.
Yeah.
It was the craziest ride ever. I got it. I auditioned once. They filmed my audition. I got a call a week later saying that I was going to be Elphaba on Broadway in the spring. I mean, it was wacky. Like, it was just one of those crazy days that you're like, my life changed, I guess, today. Cool, cool, cool.
Yeah.
Mom, hi. You know, like one of those, like, what the heck just happened to me days. And then it just began. My rehearsal process was a month long. Learned from the best of the best, Nikki Venditti being one. I
She's the
mean,
best.
taught me Elphaba
Yeah.
and MB and Antoinette. I mean, they just are rock stars, and they were extremely phenomenal guides in that rehearsal process and beyond, of course. And so Wicked actually filmed flying lessons during my rehearsal process, which is like a little series that Wicked put out that was like, oh my goodness, an immense honor to have my process documented. But it also brought about kind of a stress to the rehearsal process. You know, it made the space a little less safe, you know, just in the sense that I was like, I must perform because there are cameras
Cameras.
here. So, you know, but it was really great. And the crew was so cool and kind, and they certainly possessed wonderful support and kindness, making the room safe. But, you know, just that whole thing of like, okay, there's a camera here, like, I better be good. But then I started performances, and I actually got injured like 6 weeks into my
Really?
contract, which was, yes, it was the day that I think it was like, I did a Tuesday night show. I think this was how the week went. It was, like I said, it was really early. I did it 6 weeks in, I think. I did a Tuesday night show. I did 2 Wednesday. Then I got up Thursday morning to sing No Good Deed for Broadway.com that Thursday evening during No Good Deed. something must have happened because and something did certainly happen. I got injured. And I came in for the scene, oh, for Oz sake, stop crying,
Yeah.
talking to Dorothy. And my voice was just in a completely different space, and I exited stage after the show. I was able to finish the show, thankfully, but, I just exited the stage and I was like, something is wrong. And I know my voice and I know what I feel like. And I just knew it, I just knew something was wrong. So had to go through a recuperation process, a total recovery regimen, with speech pathologist and my incredible ENT and my vocal teacher, but that was a really um, pivotal time. I don't know if pivotal is the right word. It was a very, it was a, it was a grave time in my life. It was a lot of things, but grave was like the first word that came to mind because it was almost like my identity was taken from me for like a couple weeks. My identity is my voice. It's our means to communicate, and it's also like what I was currently doing as my livelihood. So
Yeah.
it was a rude awakening kind of, but it also was a really incredible experience in that I realized that I needed and I could ask for help. And I think that as humans, certainly I have trouble asking for help. I want to be good. I want to be good at everything and I want to be perfect and I don't want to inconvenience anyone, but it's okay to ask for help. And that was certainly a moment in my career that enabled me to wrap my head around that mentality. So that happened. And then I came back, luckily, I think it was like 5 weeks later. It was a
Wow.
recovery process for sure. But I came back and it was so wonderful to step back into Elfie's shoes, stronger,
Yeah.
and mentally harnessed in a new way, um, which was cool. And I think it served me very well for the rest of my time there. But yeah, I know you spoke with Jenny DeNoia. I mean, she and I worked together and we carried Elphaba through that contract, and she was an incredible partner to have through that process. I mean,
She's the
in
best.
spirit, the best, in spirit, in talent, in partnership and support, and that's just so important. And of course, like the green team, they call them the green team. Mary Kay, who is the hair master, who, like, I mean, every day, how are you?
Yeah.
Good, how are you? I mean, sisters. And then Alyssa, who was, my best friend, dresser, support, therapist, everything. And then Breedlove, who is the makeup artist
Yes.
extraordinaire, who's been there for so many years. And so they were dear friends. And of course, Jenna Claire Mason was my sister throughout the process. She played Glinda. It's a team building experience every single night you go out there. And the last thing I guess I'll say, of course, but I'll answer any questions you may have about the experience. But the last thing I'll say about the experience was that it also helped me learn that it is wonderful to be singular, and that's the only way we can be. And so I thank you so much for saying that my voice is singular. That means the world to me, because that is certainly what I'm trying to do, because that's all we can do as performers. We find out who we are, what we can do, what we're good at, what we want to do, and then go forth. And certainly that's something that I had to keep in mind with Elphaba, because Stephanie J. Block has done it. Gonzalez done it. Shoshana Bean, Eden Espinosa, you know what I mean? Like
I
these
know.
iconic heroes of mine that I can't psych myself out about when I'm thinking about how to sing Wizard and I, because I respect these queens so much
Was there one that
that
you saw? Like, did you see all of them? Which Elphaba? Is there a performance that you're like, this one stood out? Like, and it's obviously not
um
a disrespect to the other Elphabas, but yeah, I'd love to know.
yeah. Well, I saw Adina,
Me too.
and that was the only time that I saw it on Broadway. And I saw it on tour twice more. Um, and I honestly cannot remember who I saw on tour, which like feels terrible to say, but what I do remember is that there was such immense support and intellect behind the vocals of both women I saw on tour. I just
Yeah.
remember like leaving the theater being like, wow, 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 wow. They handled that so beautifully, so well. But the only time I saw it on Broadway was with Adina. I was lucky enough to go with a friend for her birthday party. Being from New York,
Yeah.
it's just like 3 hours away, 5 hours, 3 hours,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah, and so I was lucky enough to go and see the original cast, which was like the best experience in the world, ever.
I loved what you said because, and I have to piggyback off of that. You said such a great thing. You said, don't be afraid to ask for help. And I always say the same thing. I have to write it down sometimes. For me as a medium, we get, and I so dislike it when I see it in other mediums. I think there comes this point where for some mediums, they think they know everything. And I always start with a client by saying, we don't know everything. We're human. We're, I might misread something. I might think it's this and it's actually this. So that's why I'll often say too, and you'll know, I mean, we'll talk about it in a minute. Like you can vouch, it doesn't feel like guesswork. It's just going, this could be a symbol. So does it literally mean this, or is it symbolic of this? Because I never want to get to that point where I think I know everything as a medium. And like, there's moments where like we, in any job, I say we level up the more experience we get and the more ready. I always say like when I first started reading, I wasn't getting things past like grandparents, maybe a mom or a dad comes through. And then I think as you get more experience in it and you start getting more comfortable relaying these messages, then spirit is like, okay, we're going to ramp you up another level. And now, you might get somebody who was sadly maybe murdered, or we're going to give you a cousin. And it's like, it starts, like any job, you start learning more skills. And there were definitely moments where I was like, I need help because I don't understand what this symbol is that I'm getting, or I don't understand this. So I would go to my mentor. I always say everybody, no matter your job, should have a mentor. Everybody, and most of the time it's not am I doing the work right? You just need them as a sounding board of going, like one time I called my mentor crying. I'm like, this woman was like awful to me during the reading, but I'm like, then at the end, she was like, well, I'd like to book you again. And I'm like, and she, for me, it was very much just a therapy session with my mentor. And she was like, you did the best job that you could. You should be proud of what you did today. And it's not your job to unpack her experience. And, and I say that all the time. And so, yeah, this idea of asking for, literally in a reading, sometimes I talk out loud very often in a reading. So if you're watching at home and you're like, sometimes mediums won't audibly communicate out loud with the spirit they're channeling. Sometimes I do, just as a way of making sure I'm clear. And sometimes I'll go like, you got to help me on that. Or sometimes I'll say, can you take me up another level? And it feels like I'm in a little elevator going up, and it's a way of helping to kind of bridge that gap. So that's one thing that I struggled with when I was first starting, and I just had to get better at going, okay, like I need help on this. And then I think that's the best thing that we can do when we ask for help. Like it's always there, it's always there. We just have to ask for it. Because otherwise, somebody might not know that we need assistance. And so,
Yes, ask for the door to walk through, I
bingo.
mean, and that's so wonderful for me to hear, as someone who worked with you in this, no pun intended, in this medium.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just respect that so much that you have this capability, gift, but you are human. You have this like, it's like not every human has this gift, but you are human. And so, and you're just humble about the practice of it all, which makes me respect the practice more, and immerse myself into the whole entire belief of it.
Thank you.
If that makes any sense. Yeah.
Well, I often say too, I mean, because that's the other thing, make no mistake, like no matter the job you're doing, you can't take it for granted. And I think as a medium, I've seen it happen to others when they start to get too haughty, when they start to worry about, and here's the thing, as mediums, of course, we're going to charge a service for our reading. However, but that's any job. You wouldn't be like, I'm Hannah and I'm just going to go sing today for free. And
No.
and however, of course I give back. There's times where I'm like, I'm just doing this for free, but in terms of, I've seen some mediums and what they are charging a half hour is crazy. And then they'll come out of there and see it ticks me off because you'll have somebody go, well, I booked them and I paid $200 for a half hour because I figured if they were that expensive, they must be the best of what they're doing. And sometimes it's the opposite because like if we're charging that much money, that's like highway robbery to me, like $200 for a half hour. So I was reading this great book about Lilydale and why back in the day, Lilydale used to treat it as donation based, where you would pay what you could and people would walk away with these incredible messages because it was just this idea of I'm giving what I can today. And, you know, and so is the medium. So we were like meeting each other, like, you know, heart center of just, we're doing this. And versus like, $300 for a half hour. And the reading was, and I always say, if we're starting to get really greedy, really haughty, we'll get our ability yanked so fast. And you'll start to have psychics or mediums that'll be like, I don't know. I'm not sensing this, or I'm not, it's a blockage. It's deliberately put in our path. And I'm fortunate where I've never had that happen to me. We all get blocked sometimes because we might have our own stuff going on that we have to work through, but I've never had it where I felt like I was being, put it this way, like reprimanded in a way and my ability was yanked. So,
I love thinking about it like that. I think that's incredible. And oh my God, I want to move to Lilydale.
And what's crazy is that I learned reading this book, no one owns property there. You cannot own a home. It belongs to the assembly ship. So when you die, that house goes right back to the assembly ship of Lilydale. Crazy.
Where did you stay when you studied there?
Yeah, so I didn't, because it was such a quick drive, it was about an hour.
Oh.
I just drove, but
Great.
I remember going into like a big hall is where I trained. I trained with 3 mediums that were visiting from Upper Canada, and they were incredible. But then I remember I want to say there's like a hotel or something, or there's some rooms above one of the buildings. And I had heard that the energy there is like crazy. Like the people said, like, you're going to spend the money to stay the night, but like, you're not really able to sleep because they said the energy is so bombastic in the best way that like, that's just kind of, that's what I heard, which I thought was so neat. So,
so neat. I looked it up, you know, I read more about it and I saw pictures of it and I'm like, I need to go there. Like,
you let me know, we'll go.
Oh my God, I would
it's
love to.
really cool. And I've never, and when I was in high school, I went for the first time, and that's really when I started sensing like, all right, I think I have an ability and I have to do something. Cause I remember I stepped literally talking about crossing the line and entering onto the property. It feels different. Like I have goosebumps talking about it. Like you feel like you tap into like a different frequency, and the space feels like sacred and like ancient and just magical while you're there the entire time, and so peaceful. It's like a beach town, but it's dead quiet, you know. All the doors are open and you know, in terms of they'll tell you what places are available today. Like this medium might have a reading available at 1 and you can sign up, and they have a little gift shop and like a little coffee shop, and it's a magical, you know, place. And I'm so grateful that, like, again, this idea of mentorship and asking for help, like I'm grateful that I was able to have trained there, you know, and have done that. So
yes, it sounds like such a magical open space.
It's great.
Just, I of course you feel differently when you walk in there, because people in there think differently than everyday normal people.
That's kind of how theaters feel though too. Sometimes when I go into a theater, you go into a theater and you're like, oh, I remember when I saw The Prom on Broadway, some of the jokes, they never didn't land. You know, when there were the jokes about we're liberal Democrats from Broadway, like it was the same type of energy in that theater. You know, you didn't have anyone that was boycotting for seeing 2 women kiss on. It was very much like we're all here for the same. We all have the same belief system. You know, even if we lead our lives in different ways, we still have the same. I think the overall, like, that was a performance I will never forget, to see how electric that theater was when, you know, things start to happen for these, you know, 2 young women. And So
it's as if with Lily Dale and the theatrical community, it's as if moral compasses align.
you said it best. I could not have said it better. It's
I could not have come up with it unless you hadn't told your story about the prom. So, honey, we got there together.
moral
But it's
compass,
true.
yeah.
I mean, it's yeah.
So I'd love to talk about the reading because I read you
Yes.
I want to say 2.5 weeks ago. And it's
Yeah.
funny, sometimes I'll get nervous before reading a client if their energy feels more like very, very business, and not in a bad way, just very business. And I didn't get that with you. I was like, I was doing my notes beforehand and I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. I could just tell. And I remember
Good.
the first thing I said, you hopped on the camera and first thing I said was like, have you been burning Palo Santo? And because I smelled it in my office and I hadn't lit it, and your eyes got like so big. It was so funny.
Well, I could not believe it because you made me that beautiful introductory video.
Oh yeah.
And you mentioned, like, before our reading, think of your loved ones, in a meditative state, whether that's yoga or a walk. You named a couple things off of moments where it would be apropos to call on these loved ones who have since passed, and maybe just let them know, and you specified to name them.
Yes.
Maybe just let them know that I was having a reading, and if they'd like to communicate, that would be much appreciated. You said something along those lines. I'm sure you can articulate it more clearly than
No,
I
that's
just
really
did.
it.
Well, and good. And so I took that to heart. And the evening before our afternoon reading, I'm sitting in the bedroom and burning Palo Santo, which is actually a recent practice of mine. I'm just finding it so beautifully meditative. And it's just aromatherapy as well. It's just phenomenal. So I have been using it as of like the past month, maybe in my entire life. It's like been a very prominent part of this like past month for me.
Mhm.
So that evening before our reading, I'm sitting in my chair and I'm looking at a picture of my grandparents. I have this beautiful old photo of them when they were young, and it's them. They're dressed up and they're in Atlantic City, and it's just an iconic photo. So I'm burning Palo Santo that evening, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, guys, like, if you want to show up, Jay, Annette, if you want to show up, I would really appreciate that. And fast forward to getting on the call, and you saying Palo Santo, rewind to that evening. I mean, I am like, my head is like filled with Palo Santo, the whole room, like hot box with Palo Santo, but like talking to Jay and Annette. So the fact that you said Palo Santo, I was just like, okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna have fun. This is
I
yeah.
always say right in the beginning and right at the end when I do a prayer and when I end with a prayer, what happens is that your brain is really relaxed and my brain is really relaxed. So it's these really potent moments for me to start to soak up messages. So for example, like when I mentioned the Palo Santo, and last night I was reading somebody and I closed down with a prayer, and all of a sudden I saw a match and I could smell it. I'm like, I have to really quick. I just have to relay. I'm like, how do you connect with the match with your mother? And she started, tearing up, and she was like, it was her mother-in-law that she would never have met, but she was like, I found out recently that she would not use a lighter. She would only use matches. And many times when I'm in the house, I'll start to smell sulfur. So she was like, we just know that that's her way of checking in. So I always say in the beginning and the end, they like to just sandwich it and tie it with the bow of, oh, by the way, don't forget this. And that's my time that I'll try to get evidential information of this is how we know it's valid. Because they always want to end on a positive. The whole reading should always be positive, but they really want to end with the cherry on top, the bow tied of, by the way, just in case you had any doubts, buttons. Or they'll say a random word or something like, that's all I needed to hear. So can you talk
Oh,
about yours? Is there any whatever you feel comfortable talking about?
yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, well, we started off with a bang with the Palo Santo, which struck me to my core. And, I was really moved by how my grandmother, Annette, came through predominantly. Initially, she was the first one. And I would say predominantly in the reading, she was present. She was present. And then in came Jay, my grandfather, you know, and but Annette was incredible. She is my grandmother on my mother's side. So she's my mom's mom. She was my mom's mom. And she passed a while ago, um, like 13 years ago. So she's the one, you know, that it's like when people pass on, it's so wild because it's like, okay, you're just never going to be able to see them, talk to them again. And I think that's like it's just, you know, a realization that really hurts when someone passes. And so it's like, oh my God, I would give anything to talk to Annette. You know, I've always thought that, like, I would give anything to talk to Annette again, one more day. And so this was so just gratifying in that respect. It was like she came through, and I I I was really struck by how you said, is there, I'm seeing like fabric, or like, are you repurposing something? I mean, that I was like, yes, I just literally made a dress, which I entitled Annette's house dress because it was based off of this apron that Annette would always wear and that now my mom wears, you know, when she cooks holiday
Yeah.
meals. And so that just struck me so deeply. And I really took to heart, what she came through to say regarding, you know, my career versus this other artistic passion. I took it, you know, it was pretty general in the sense that, not general, but it was, she was saying you can do both. You can do, you know, you weren't like, you didn't know about the Rose House at that point, you
No.
know, and she wasn't specifying it through you. So, you know, that's why I say it wasn't like, you can do the Rose House and you can be Hannah Corneau, the actress. You know, it wasn't that explicit, but that is totally what it was.
And it's never
And
going to be. I should preface, they're never going to say, because that's the other thing. It's never you have to do this or you cannot do this. And sometimes they might not, because here's the other thing, not to cut you off, but for me, it does. I will know, like, you know, I think it'll be, you can tell if it's generic if somebody's asking like a bajillion questions, like, do you do things in your spare time? Like, duh, everyone does. Like, you know, and
yeah.
but one of the first things I had written down for you was like about career and not to be afraid to have these alternate, you know, ventures. And so, and then
Yes.
from there, because that's the other thing too, as a medium, you don't want to be so specific that you overshoot and you actually miss the point of the message. That's why some
Yeah.
of them might sound a little bit more, not generic, but broad, because there's more than
Yeah.
one way to get to that. And I never want to go, it has to be this, she's telling me, because I could goof it up and then you walk away not getting the message that you're supposed to get. Do you know what I mean?
Totally, totally. But I immediately knew in this regard, I immediately knew what she was saying. And you know, she also came through to say, don't worry, you're not going to go backwards, which of course that is something that I'm thinking of. You know, I made my Broadway debut and the rocket was really taking off, you know, the rocket of Hannah Corneau's theatrical career. Of course I've had incredible experiences before Wicked, but Wicked was the biggest thus far. And so, like I said, like this rocket was about to take off and then the world shut down, you know, so it's, of course, it was super comforting to hear that, because to hear that I'm not going to go backwards, like, just chill, girl, like, you're gonna be okay. And so her direct messages to me were so powerfully received. And then my grandfather came, her husband Jay, and the way he spoke with and like to my mother was really wild. I mean, my mother really supported him, and the fact that he came through and articulated his appreciation was so meaningful. I mean, it was so meaningful.
I forgot when we spoke. I remember I used the word they linked back up and I didn't know why I said it. Do you remember that?
They
And then
linked back up.
I said they linked up or something back on the other side. And you were like, oh my God, you're like the photo that I was,
The photo.
the arms
Yep.
are like not holding hands, they're linked. And so there's many times where I'm just told, say it as is. And so I'll say it that way and not knowing like, yeah, there, and then those are
And
the moments where you're like, oh my God.
oh my God. I mean, and that, you know, the Palo Santo photo that I was looking at, the arms are linked. The
Mhm.
arms are linked. I mean, it was amazing. And also something that really struck me too was that you know, you my grandfather and you ushered in the message like he is really focusing on your mom, implying that there was other children, which there are. My mother has a brother. The fact that, you know, it was just honing in on my mother
Yeah.
was really, really special. And, you know, another thing, I mean, there were so many things, you know, about me and about my partner, um, and about my sister, which was like wild.
Oh,
And
yes.
yes, yes, how you spoke about my sister and her journey. I mean, I could not agree more with the things that you said, which like I won't necessarily share right
No,
now because I don't know if like these
don't.
people necessarily want me to, but it was just uncanny at times. It was just really comforting as well. It was like, yeah, it was amazing. And okay, and then the thing that really struck me was the car, you know. So we went on to talk about my father's parents, and that was interesting, but they're not at the top of my heart brain as I mean, they I just didn't know them as well. I loved them. They were so phenomenal, but I didn't know them as much and hadn't formed such strong bonds with them as I had with Jay and Annette. So it was no surprise that Jay and Annette came through very, very strongly. But then when you said there's a car, I'm seeing a car, did he work on a car? Was there something? And I'm like, and I left our session being like, I'm not sure. So then I asked my mom and I said, did anyone in our family, you know, work on cars, have, you know, collected cars? Well, my great grandfather had an auto body shop. So, which
Mhm.
I was like, okay.
You like emailed me right away, and it's funny because I went home and I was like, I hope that one clicks with her because and that's the other thing too. We just know some. So if you're listening at home, what that looked like in front of me, because I always love to break it
Yes.
down of like, here's what I'm seeing.
Yes,
If
please do.
if I just see a car, that's almost always my symbol for they're in the car with you while you're driving. And this was different. I saw the car, but it's so neat what they'll do. They'll take it one step further, and I saw the hood open. So for me, that's why I started asking you. And because sometimes people will ask, well, if you can hear them, why don't they just tell you everything? Because I hear what they choose to give me or show me. It's not like,
Yes.
they're not speaking full paragraphs like we do. So when I saw the hood open and I saw dirty hands, then you have to go one step further and go, all right, I think they worked on cars. You know what I mean? Like it's very much a process. So it's active listening and I haven't played Pictionary in a long time, but I would guess that I'd probably be damn good at Pictionary now because like that's how it works. I'm like, you really have to think quickly on your feet because they don't have a lot of time either because it takes energy out of spirit to communicate. So I have to, they're vibrating up here. We're normally down here. I have to meditate before I contact them because it raises my vibration. So, and then what they'll do is they'll kind of lower theirs so we eventually meet here and we can talk. But they can't do it forever. I can't do it forever. So, really, that clock starts ticking and it's okay. And I never feel the pressure like that, but it is very much okay, work on your feet. And you do have to, that's why I don't like when mediums will just go, they're in the car with you. You're missing a message there. If that hood is being opened, don't say they're in the car with you because that's not the message. The message is they're giving evidential information. And so I don't know. That's just I love to try to break down for people what it looks like on our end because no like all the mediums that I've been to again it's not their job but I think me being a teacher I find it so important to break down the educational part of like what's happening on my end and I
Yes.
don't know
It's
that's
very important to talk about what's happening on your end
yeah
because, you know, when speaking with my mom about this session, well, one more thing before we go
sure
into why it's the power of you breaking it down. I just want to say, like, after the auto body, you were like, what's an L? Who's L? He's saying hi. It was Louis.
yeah
That's who that's who owned the shop. So crazy. And then another thing that really hit me was the neuropathy thing, but which we can talk about that afterwards. But I just want to say, yes, it's very important um, to talk and break down what's happening within you, within your mind, within, just within you, because so many people are so curious. And I'm so glad that you're breaking it down here once again for me. And I'm glad that you kind of broke it down before our reading as well, because I was able to talk to my mom and say, it's not as though Annette was like, hey, James, so glad we're here today. It was like, there, you saw a cloth.
Bingo.
That's right. And so you're seeing images, and you're trusting those images and your gut with what those images may mean. I'm not telling. So I guess,
You
and
are
that's kind of what I
absolutely
see in my
correct. So
gut.
you're
Okay.
using your claircognizance, which is clear knowing, and it's often like what we say around like the solar plexus chakra. And we're like, all right, it's very Elphaba, close my eyes and leap. And then sometimes we're getting the clairvoyance of this is what I'm being shown. However, if I don't feel it in my gut, I'm not gonna say it. There's other times where I'm really confused, where I will. Just recently, I got somebody where I'm like, oh, I I'm hearing mom, 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 mom. So I know what I'm hearing, but my gut is telling me your mom is not deceased. And
Uh-huh.
then I'm like, does this make sense? And I was like, this feels like a grandma though. And they're like, it's crazy that you say that because we called her mama, but she was my grandmother. So that's when you have to go, all right, I'm using this. This doesn't feel right. So I'm just going to verbalize it. That's even for me, I'm always learning on the job. I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't, you know what I mean? Like,
You're always learning on the job. And yes, I can agree with that, and I can attest to that. And you know what else I will commend you on, and that you talk about how like your work parallels work of artists. I mean, you are an artist, and that like there's just a capability that's a gift at the same time. But you don't have an ego about it. You're not driven by your ego or your pride in this work, and that is why you are successful. In my opinion, that's why you're successful at this. Um, and that's how you're able to do the best work, and that absolutely applies to performance as well. I mean, it's just truth. It's just
thank you.
honesty.
Ego,
It's
ego absolutely will block your ability to do a good job. And
yeah.
and it's funny, like I've read actors that have had the ego factor, and I'm like, it will block the quality of the reading. And people, and even if you're not a medium, I often say like, you can smell it a mile away sometimes. And it's, anyway, that's a whole nother day, but
Yeah,
I know
totally.
I know we're wrapping up, but I really want to promote. Can you tell me more about the Rose House? Because
Oh
this,
my goodness.
I'm obsessed with it. I go on Instagram now because that's the other thing too. If you're watching at home, I have to restrict people's accounts. So after you reached out to me, I had to restrict you because I don't want anything to pop up on my wall. And then I unrestrict you, and then there's the apron. I'm like, damn it. I'm like, is this it? And you're like, all caps, like, yes. So tell us about the Rose House, how we can support it because it's incredible.
Oh, oh my gosh, you are so kind. And yes, I loved that moment when you finally did follow back. In the beginning, when I was looking to get in touch with you, Jenny Denoya was like, he asks that you email him. And at first I was like, oh, okay. I had no problem with that, but I was curious. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, he's respecting the process of the collaboration.
Yeah.
And respecting, yeah, just the validity of your work, which I respected so much. But yeah, I
Thank you.
loved connecting with you, and I appreciate your support immensely. The Rose House is something that I started in 2020. It was I came to a crossroads, and it was like, do I want to teach? Or do I want to become an entrepreneur? Or do I want to? I'm not entirely sure right now. And then I was sure, and I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur, and I really um, want to create this world of fashion, this world of style, art, culture, beauty. Um, and that's the Rose House. And it's a curation of vintage finds. I'm making custom pieces as well that are going to drop in the new year.
I can't
That I'm
wait.
super. Oh my God, you're so kind. I'm super excited about it. It is totally creatively fueling me. It is providing me joy. And my goodness, if anyone knows about the Enneagram, do you know about the Enneagram?
I don't think so.
It's a cool thing. It's almost like the Myers-Briggs test, but it's like 9 different types of personalities. I encourage you and your listeners to read about it. The Enneagram, it's called. But
Enneagram.
I'm a type 8, and that's just like a control freak. So certainly the Rose House is serving the control freak in me, because it's
Sure.
giving me this creative control that as actors oftentimes we don't always get. And I really love trusting my intuition, as you trust your intuition, and I feel as though I'm being able to exercise that trust in my intuition within the Rose House. So yes, if you want to follow along and collect any of our pieces, you can follow at the Rose House underscore on Instagram. But again, thank you so much for
Oh
your
no, that
support.
link that link will be up. I was just telling my spouse about it. I was like, go and look at it. You remind me of like a Sally Bowles like cabaret in some of these shots. Like I could just see you like,
I love Sally. I played Sally in college. My senior year of college, I played it.
I
You
went down the
knew. You just knew.
I went down the rabbit hole today, and I was watching and the best rabbit hole. Like I was watching clips of you and Les Mis and Evita, and just like dripping sweat. Like I was like, oh my god, like more. If you were stuck as a ghost in a theater for all of eternity and could only watch one show over and over, a musical every night, what would you pick?
Oh my God, this is so phenomenal. Well, it's between Spring Awakening or West Side Story, and I think I would choose West Side Story.
Oh, West Side's a good one.
The
Like,
music. I would never, and the Dream Ballet, you know what I mean? Even on days that I'd be like, this again, I at the end of the Dream Ballet of somewhere, I'd be like, all right, I'm happy to be here.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
again, more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both are good choices.
Oh,
Any character that you've played that could benefit most from a medium?
these questions are just slaying me. Oh my goodness gracious. This is so great. Well, to be quite honest, I would really, really love to step in Vincent and St. Vincent Millay's shoes and be Red. I think that character would really benefit, because it would be so interesting to see and to hear about the relationships and her spiritual vibrations and how they applied to her, and try to decode the information that she would get from a session with a medium, and try to decode that and see where that came out in her poetry, I guess, if that makes sense.
It does, because I gave Carmel a piece of information about Edna after we chatted. And so she's like, I have to look into this. I'll fill you in when we're done, rolling. But Edna did come through at the second time with a very interesting thing in her hand. So I'll fill you in after. Really, really neat. And so Carmel's like, I'm looking into this. It was crazy. So,
Okay.
if you could go back in time and originate a character that was made famous by someone else, or made somebody a star turn, which character would you go back and try to originate?
Fanny Bryce.
Excellent. And then
These questions are the best questions I've literally ever been asked in an interview, ever. And I'm not exaggerating. These are the best. Okay.
do you have a fun Wicked blooper that you can share?
Oh God. um, oh God. Like, honestly, I wish I was more fun. No, like I don't, because I'm such a perfectionist. So like, I just would not allow it. I mean, something, well, a patron, like literally came on stage during One Short Day, like literally climbed on the stage and crossed up. Yep. Up stage, right. Just walked across the stage during One Short Day, just like immersed themselves in Oz and past us. And we were like, okay. And then I go down to to the trapdoor to enter for Defying Gravity. The scene of Defying Gravity, and stage manager was like, they are being escorted out of the building, like it is okay, but like it was crazy. I mean, it was wild.
And then I guess finally, and it's funny, I don't really have bloopers of there's no real bloopers that you can have, too many during a reading, but the one time I won't say the word because it's like really bad, but I got a tongue like my tongue got tied and like a really filthy word came out instead of like the word that was supposed to be like a really bad one. And like I'm sitting with like this older woman across from me and like exit. I don't know what two words I was trying to use, but like the C word came out, and I'm like, that is
I
not.
knew it.
I was like,
I knew it.
I was like, that's not what what your mother is trying to say, right? I was mortified. I was like dripping, and I'm chugging my water, and
Totally.
and then
The
finally,
worst.
if we could go back, many, many, many bajillions of years when we're all not here anymore, how would you want people to look back and remember Hannah Corneau?
Wow. Kind and genuine.
Which you are.
That's Thanks.
You are. There is something like ethereal and otherworldly about you. There's no way there. It's interesting when we met. I was like, I feel like I've known her. I was like, it's really weird. I was like, I feel like I have known her for like such a long time, and
I love that.
it
I
has
love that
been
so much.
a gift to be able to read for you and to have you back. And I could pinch myself because many times with these interviews, you get one chance, and I'm very fortunate where I get two opportunities to speak with somebody. But I know when this is all done, we'll get together. We'll go take some artsy. I'm gonna buy some Rose House goods, and I will help sell these products. So you don't need help sell them; they're gonna fly.
Oh my
So
God, please help me sell the products. No, I truly cannot tell you what a gift it has been to connect with you. I mean, I appreciate your willingness to have this reading with me, and then of course to follow up today with me, because it has been a realm that I've always wanted to delve into. And really, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time and concentration and energy to deliver me messages and good thoughts and powerful words from people I really, really, really care about. The fact that you were able to provide that for me and my life, like there are no words for the appreciation that I have. So my goodness, like tenfold back at you.
well, the
Really.
feeling is mutual. So I want to thank you so much. If for those
Thank
of you
you.
listening and watching at home, I will put up all the good links, some of my favorite Hannah Corneau bootlegs and performances, where you can find the Rose House, where you can book her for training. I will put all those good things your way. So, Hannah, be
Thank you.
well, and I'll talk to you
You too.
soon.
Be well. Thank you so much
You're
again.
welcome. Bye bye.
Bye.